All right, thank you. Welcome to the last panel of the day. Thank you for enduring a long day and being here with us. Hopefully this is a valuable panel for a lot of people out there. And it's best I'm moderating this because I recently left a big corporate company that I failed to get on a Bitcoin standard or adopt any Bitcoin at all. So on the panel here, we're going to start just with a quick introduction so people understand the situation that everyone on this panel is in their jobs currently. And so we will start with the one guy not actually in a corporation, and that is Tim Kotzman. So Tim, maybe a brief intro, and then we'll go down the line of everyone else to talk about where they're at in their company today.
Sure, thanks. So my background is just entrepreneurial, the land side of oil and gas, and that kind of parlayed into private equity. So, working with attorneys and service providers that are not only proficient in their profession, but passionate about Bitcoin's obviously a plus, but I'm sure we'll get into a lot of that. So yeah, it's been interesting to launch like a Bitcoin fund, but if you're the kind of founder, CEO, probably just, nice to surround yourself with people that are Bitcoiners to the extent possible.
Sven?
Yeah, so my name is Sven. Hi. I'm working for one of the largest European cryptocurrency exchanges, currently trading more than 500 different crypto tokens.
And we're going to not talk about 499 of them. So,
and I'm the Bitcoiner in that organization.
Jonas?
Yeah, so I'm Jonas, or Jonas, the German way. I work at a company called AMP, which is basically like a pension fund in Australia. And we manage around 60 billion in assets under management for Australians' retirement. And last year we became the first of these pension funds, or superannuation funds as they're called in Australia, to invest into Bitcoin. And I work as a quant in the investment team. But apart from the quant work that I do, I'm also the resident Bitcoin maxi and educator, and I've run educational sessions all throughout the company, from investment team to board of directors, and also make a clear distinction between Bitcoin and crypto.
Excellent.
Yeah, and I'm Thomas. I work at Sygnum Bank. Sygnum Bank is a global digital asset technology group that operates as a regulated financial institution across Switzerland, Liechtenstein, Abu Dhabi, Singapore, and Luxembourg. I'm now serving as a Deputy Group CEO and Chief Strategy Officer, but have been acting for the majority of my tenure, so the last 5 years, as Chief Product Officer, building up our product portfolio across Bitcoin and crypto and associated tokens.
Awesome. So I'm going to open this one up to the panel here. If some of you could talk about your experiences within your company, the access to decision makers, and how do you bring up this subject to people in your corporation?
Maybe I can go ahead with that first when it comes to why did I leave the company beforehand. So before I actually went into the Bitcoin world, I was working for an asset management company, and I was trying to bring up the topic Bitcoin within that asset management company, and I failed.
That makes two of us.
Well, yeah. Well, I didn't fail in bringing it up, but I failed in bringing it up in a way that it was digestible, understandable, and acceptable for the people that I wanted it to understand and accept. That was not like very early in the days, but pretty early in the days, and I think a lot of people made the same experience.
Do you think there's anything you would do different now? Do you think maybe if I had approached it in a different way, that we could have had a different result, or do you think that it was written in stone?
I don't. I think it was written in stone because at that point in time, the whole landscape and everything around it was so framed so drastically bad, but this has changed tremendously in the last couple of years. And I've been in the space now since a decade, always working on the intersection of like regulated financial institutions and the crazy Bitcoin world. And I can't be more bullish than as of now, because it is just, all those things in the past that regulatory framework was not clear, the trust was not there, and that all of those things happened. But now we're kind of like in this, after a decade of pushing into that, we're like finally in the stage where I can mainly talk about the German and the Austrian and the Swiss market. We are, and you can obviously talk about more. We are in the phase where all of the traditional financial institutions, they're going into that, and this is not going to stop anymore. You can find it good or bad, but it's not going to stop.
No, definitely not. I'm curious, anyone else on the panel have experiences within their organization and what it was like reaching out to people?
Yeah, so maybe I'll go next. Based on what you said, I think I just happened to be at the right place at the right time. I really started making noise about Bitcoin only last year. And the thing that really triggered us investing into Bitcoin was the launch of the spot Bitcoin ETFs in the US. To us as an institutional investor, that was really the milestone that made it institutional grade, and we started actually considering it. But then even after we invested into Bitcoin, and we have a very small allocation to Bitcoin, it's like 30 million out of the 60 billion that we manage. But even after that happened, I found that there were a lot of people, especially within the investment team, which is where I work, that were still skeptical of Bitcoin, that maybe didn't really understand it, and were still throwing Bitcoin in the same bucket as crypto. And I kind of saw where that was going, but I also knew that we were now the leader in the market in Australia and almost globally, because there's only a handful of pension funds that have done this thus far. So I actually approached our chief investment officer, Anna is her name, and I just said to her, look, Anna, I know this might sound a bit hyperbolic, but I think what we just did is actually massive and could be one of the biggest opportunities over the next decade or maybe even more. And I know that the biggest hurdle internally is that a lot of people are still skeptical and maybe don't understand Bitcoin that well. So the biggest hurdle was lack of education and lack of open dialogue, because there were even people that were shutting the conversation down still. So I said to her, look, I've studied this thing for well over 1,000 hours. I really understand it well. How about we just set up an educational session in the investment team? And then if that goes well, we can do that with other teams as well. She loved the idea. She's super open to innovation. And this is one thing that I have to say as well. I happened to also work at a retirement fund or pension fund where people have this culture of being open and being willing to embrace innovation. So then I ran that educational session and it went really well. Then they asked me to do it for the leadership team, then the executive team, so CEO, CFO. And the CEO liked it so much that she asked me to do it to the board of directors as well. So I feel like I've moved through every stage of the firm and it's landed really well everywhere. But I couldn't have done that without the institutional gradedness through the ETFs being there.
And I'm curious, have you found that as you've had these conversations, clearly you got kind of the initial buy-in and okay, we'll put a very small percentage into this. Have you found that there's also an openness to, okay, one, maybe we need to learn more, and two, maybe we need to think about a larger allocation?
100%. I mean, we're now talking about, in the next couple of months, potentially doubling our current allocation. And then but this will probably happen over years, we're considering potentially increasing that as well. But because we're so tightly regulated and we have benchmarks that we're measured against, we actually, even if we wanted to move to a couple percent...
You will crush all the benchmarks, right?
Yeah.
Well, but that's the thing. If for some reason we don't, then the punishment is super severe. So that's the balance that we have to find. We have to be embracing this new technology, but also risk responsible because we're dealing with retirement money here.
I mean, for us, maybe it was a bit different because we weren't existing as, let's say, as a traditional organization from the beginning that then slowly tapped into crypto. But our company was founded for the purpose of operating at this intersection of traditional financial services and Bitcoin and the crypto world. So our company was only founded in 2018 with the ambition, to become a regulated financial institutions across different jurisdictions. And in Switzerland, we are operating as a bank, and that would have been also my advice, right? For those who want to enter into crypto, yes, it needs education, and then you probably want to access it through a means that you are familiar with and through a means that usually portrays trust. And there, either you go through a wrapped solution such as an ETF, or probably everyone understands, or you go through a bank such as ourselves, which hopefully also many know how to deal with. I think the conversation that we currently have internally, given we have been operating in the crypto and the Bitcoin space from the beginning, is more the separation of Bitcoin and crypto. Because obviously we have a lot of clients. Clients typically want diversification, they want choice, they want to have the ability to put together their own portfolios. And at the same time, I've just recently looked up the numbers today, more than 65% of the crypto or of the assets held on our platform are Bitcoin. And the rest is super diversified, the remaining 35%. So crypto is a distinct asset. The question is, what can we do in order to give it the space, in order to develop solutions around it, and also bring that distinction across to our clients?
So when you were initially going through that and peeling off, what kind of buy-in did you have to get? What kind of what kind of buy-in was needed to form the group that you did?
Initially, to build the company, to found the company, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not a co-founder, but I can talk about how they came together. They initially had the ambition, because they also, I think, were very early in the space, and they had the ambition actually to create an investment fund that invests into Bitcoin and crypto, and then realized, and that was quite a few years back, and then they realized, very difficult, you basically lack the means in order to do so, because you need to have certain governance in place, you need to have certain intermediaries and service providers that provide their bits and pieces in order to make it happen. And then they realized, well, one missing piece is clearly a bank that offers access to Bitcoin and crypto, and that's initially then how the idea was born. And then I think it was rolled out, and we pursued it, and luckily we had a regulator and also a political system in Switzerland that was very supportive of DLT, and also was very progressive in putting regulation in place that allowed us to do this in a regulated manner, and that's how we could roll out our services over time.
Tim, I don't know if you have any thoughts of getting buy-in, maybe not necessarily with the company you work at, but other parties you're talking to and dealing with. Are you out there having to get buy-in from them?
Yeah, I mean, reminds me of my attorney. He's a passionate Bitcoiner, so it just makes it easier as opposed to going to counsel that's like, I don't know anything about crypto, and so I'm not even willing to draft these private placement documents. So that's a lot better. But I guess if you think about everything that's going on now in the corporate space, right? All these Bitcoin treasury companies, but they're part of the Bitcoin network. Well, if my network or my corporation is all these other founders and entrepreneurs and service providers, I remember visiting Scaramucci's office in late 2021, early 2022, with Brett Messing, and we were like, should we white label our Bitcoin fund through you guys or do it independently? And my advisor was asking some really good leading questions, like, what's the distribution curve on that? And we left the meeting, he's like, Tim, there's if Scaramucci's on CNBC every single week, and they're raising, it was very early days, but single digit or double digit millions, what are we going to do? It's just, maybe we should just keep focusing on your background of oil and gas. So yeah, I talk with investors every day, and they're like, and I tell them that we're early, and they're like, we're not early. And I'm like, we are early. And they're like, no, they're late, we're early. I'm like, no, this might be a tangent, but they also say, oh.
Please, tangents are acceptable.
Yeah, I mean, we have a little bit of time. They're saying, oh, these Bitcoin treasury companies, they're overheating, they're so leveraged. I'm like, is this the top? I'm like, number one, nobody knows the future. Number two, this is not financial advice. But honestly, there's only strategy, Semler, and a bunch of UTXO formed companies. That's it. It's barely started. So, yeah, if you want to talk about buy-in from corporates, we're at the starting line. So, yeah.
So along those lines, aligning yourself with third parties that understand what's going on here. I'm sure you guys have all been through it, but maybe talk just a little bit about having the courage to speak up and say something. Why is it important? How do you find the courage? How do you have the the conviction and the understanding, and really making sure you're rooted in understanding what you're going to be recommending to people, and how you've gone about that?
For me, it's a very personal story and a very personal answer to that question. And that's that I will not be having kids, because my wife and myself, we decided to not have kids. And I believe that after looking into Bitcoin for long enough, it took me a while, but after looking into Bitcoin for long enough, I sincerely believe that this is larger than myself, and that I can contribute. And I mean, it sounds crazy, but I really do have the feeling that I can contribute to make the world a better place, and that's larger than me. And as I won't leave anything in the world that is like kids, that is a means for me to make myself a little bit, to leave something in this world.
So would you say that it really took a full understanding of the implications of Bitcoin and what it could mean for all of society to help push you in that direction?
I would never say I have a full understanding.
Well, no, of course not. Yes.
Yeah, so I would never say I would have a full understanding of Bitcoin, but I do have an okay-ish understanding of Bitcoin. And when I went in, I mean, it was about getting rich quick. As simple as that. I went in, I was like, okay, number go up, yes. But I really stayed for the revolution of it. And it is, when I'm doing like talks with bankers and stuff, and I do a lot of talks with bankers and stuff, I usually ask the question like, who studied Bitcoin more than 1,000 hours? And you always have like 3 people who are raising up their hands. There's always like 3 or 4. And then I'm asking the question, okay, so can you briefly explain how many Bitcoin there ever will be in this world? And I want the exact number. And after you told me the exact number, which is not 21 million, but a little bit less, I asked the question, okay, and who can tell me how the halving works? And there's one who can always state the right thing, and he's heavily invested in Bitcoin. And then you're asking the question, so okay, do you own Bitcoin yourself? And they're like, yeah, I own Bitcoin myself. And then you get a little maxi speech. And then you have the 2 others who can't answer the question. Then you're asking, okay, do you have any exposure to Bitcoin? And they're like, no. And then you know, okay, they don't know anything what they're talking about. They just want to be fancy and say they're cool, but they're not.
I found personally, as many people did, learned about Bitcoin, thought, oh, I have a great understanding. I'm going to go proselytize to everyone around me, especially the people I work at. And I personally think I did myself and my company a disservice of, not having fully put in the time to understand the important aspects of Bitcoin to properly deliver it to an organization, to someone else that you're trying to pitch it to. I'm curious to hear some other maybe personal anecdotes of if you went too early and found success later, or just being able to properly frame the issue and talk about it. How important having the knowledge base and as Sven said, not a full understanding of Bitcoin, but a strong understanding of Bitcoin.
Yeah, I think initially, this was pre-ETF launch, I tried to have conversations about Bitcoin internally, and because it wasn't the right time yet, it wasn't well received, but I also hadn't had that failure of trying to orange pill people and failing at it to really have the right approach, because I think it's not just what you say, it's how you say it, and it's how you build a narrative and explain to people, in my case, in the pension space, why is something like Bitcoin important? What problem does it solve, and why does it solve it in a superior fashion to anything else? And then you discover all of these other things along the way. Like, what we're doing essentially is we're helping Australians build for their retirement and maintain or grow their purchasing power into retirement. What does that require? A low time preference. That's perfectly aligned with Bitcoin. And there's all these other things that you discover along the way of understanding your audience, for example. I knew at some point after having discussions internally what their skepticisms were, and then learned through podcasts, through reading, through messaging back and forth with ChatGPT or Grok, how to actually address those in the best way. And the other thing that I really learned was that toxic Bitcoin maximalism has a place, but at your firm, it's not the right thing to do if you want to convince people. You have to be understanding and you have to be humble. Everybody was wrong about Bitcoin at some point, or at least 99% of people probably were. I was wrong about it for way too long. I wish I could go back in time and be right about it earlier as well. But if you are understanding and if you hold people's hands along the way on their journey because they're early on the journey, and you do it the right way, it can actually work.
I'd agree. I think in order to speak up, I think you really need to have a very deeply rooted conviction about Bitcoin and why it's so distinct and why it's so special. I think we see that a bit when we now talk about that ever-growing distinction between Bitcoin and crypto internally, especially when we talk maybe also to those governance bodies within the firm that are maybe a bit further away from the business, a bit further away from what we do. And we've launched an initiative that's called Bitcoin at Signum. And there also, we got every now and then the questions, why do we need an initiative that is Bitcoin at Signum, but why don't we need an initiative that is Ethereum at Signum? And that's exactly why then these people exactly needed that narrative, needed to have the deeply rooted conviction, and needed to also voice that and phrase that in a way that is also understandable to people that may be naturally a bit further away from the topic. So I think it needs a deeply rooted conviction that is based on a lot of education and the 1,000 hours or more that you've put into, and then you need to find the right narrative that is targeted to the respective audience, and then I think you have a chance to succeed, but it's by no means guaranteed.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more with, you need to know your audience, you need to have conviction, but you have to have passion. And before I say this, please, no one take this literally and obey all local laws and regulations. But you have to set yourself on fire for Bitcoin. And then the people that have a need to know will be open to it. I mean, I literally had dinner with an acquaintance. I'd maybe met him once before the dinner last fall in New York. And I was so excited about starting a podcast and all these things, but I was just telling him what was going on in my life. I had no idea until months later, and he called me because he'd asked me a few other questions. I was like, maybe he's kind of interested. He's like, no, Tim, you totally orange-pilled me, and now I'm launching the first ever whatever fund in my industry that's going to have a Bitcoin treasury. And I'm like, I didn't go there trying to be like, all right, I'm going to listen, and then I'm going to know my audience. I was just like being a maniac for Bitcoin. So I think it also helps that you do now have some of these service providers that are not in a really big skyscraper in New York, but they're more approachable. They're, they still have a retainer, but they can actually help private businesses. So they're like credible, but also approachable. So it's not some big four name to help people that are interested in at least having that conversation.
I love the Bitcoin self-immolation. Fantastic. So along those lines, I had a similar experience at the organization I was at where maybe I didn't get through to the C-suite folks, but I had other people around me, coworkers, seeing that I talked about Bitcoin a lot. I helped them get set up on a DCA and a hard wallet and those sort of things. And you may not have a direct impact on putting your organization onto a Bitcoin standard or getting a corporate treasury strategy adopted at the organization you work at, or even necessarily getting buy-in from the C-suite or executives or whoever, but you are making an impact to those around you just by your actions, just by what you're talking about. And I'm curious to hear if other people have similar stories to mine where maybe it's not the highest people in the organization, but coworkers who then tell other people, and someone, I became known as the Bitcoin guy. So if there was a question on some credit or a question about, the latest altcoin or whatever, go talk to Brandon. I'm just curious if other people had similar experiences and interactions with other people, maybe in your direct sphere of influence.
Yes.
You're smiling, so you must have a story.
Yeah.
Man, I'm just like, I'm the maniac. but I
Two maniacs up here.
But I try to do it in a way that is acceptable for the person who's standing right in front of me. So one thing that I think was cool was that I actually orange built my local Späti or kiosk. What do you say? Kiosk?
Kiosk is
Like the little shop where you can buy stuff.
a little mart.
Little market.
Yeah.
So I do have like one of those little markets in my street, and it's run by a Turkish guy. And I was talking with him about like Bitcoin and stuff, and I was like, "You should accept Bitcoin." And he looked at me. He was like, "I don't know what it is, but yes, let's do it." And so I set him up a little. I made him a wallet and. Have a little like a QR code so people can pay, and actually, you know, the first day I came in and I paid, and he was happy because it all worked. And I do have my network in Germany, so I actually texted in all of the Telegram groups and, you know, all of that stuff. I was like, go to that guy, buy stuff with Bitcoin. And I think it was like 2 days later, he had like 100 people visiting his store, buying shit with Bitcoin. And he was like the happiest guy ever. So he was like, man, that really worked. Now I've got like 100 people coming in, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yes, but it'll not be that way in 2 weeks from now. So there might be a little bias in there. So that's one of the things. There is another thing which I found pretty cool. Also happened in good old Germany. So there was a new all-time high hitting. I don't know if you heard the story, but there was obviously some guy who was sitting in a train, and he was actually inviting everybody on this train when the new all-time high hit for free drinks. I mean, how cool is that? Then you have like a whole train, and they're all like, you know, you hear a little person saying, hey, we hit a new Bitcoin all-time high. Now you're all invited by Satoshi Nakamoto, and nobody knows anything, but they'll learn about it and stuff. I think.
How will you listen to my timeshare presentation?
Well, yeah, I mean, you just need to do things.
Yes.
Don't be afraid.
Awesome. Anyone else have any stories of maybe people around you that came to you or you reached out to directly, or even Tim, in your case, I used to work with a lot of third parties, a lot of attorneys and consultants, and the word got around that hey, if you have a question about Bitcoin, this is the guy you should talk to. And so curious if anyone else has some stories too.
Oh, so many stories. Let's see.
We'll take 5.
The top 5 stories. Well, the guy that orange pilled me sitting in the front row right now, and I knew nothing about Bitcoin, and he said, hey, I have most of my net worth in Bitcoin, but I don't know if he just wanted to orange pill me or make a new friend, but he's like, I'll throw some money into your private equity deal. And I got on the call to pitch him my project, and I literally in the presentation said, this is oil and gas. These are mineral rights. It's like real property recorded in the courthouse, not like that other digital stuff, right? That's not actually real. So we all start somewhere, but stories. I've been very fortunate to have, as I've said, service providers that really get it. And the ones that don't get it, you just kind of do the business, and there's not that relationship there. But I'll pass for now. I'll probably interrupt somebody else when I have a funny story. But yeah,
I've got a bit of a personal one, I guess, as well. That just shows you how powerful this can actually be. So my brother, he's sitting somewhere here as well. He's the one that orange pilled me, my younger brother, which is probably why it took me a bit longer because of my ego, because it's my younger brother. So how can he be smarter than me? But on Bitcoin, he definitely was. And we unfortunately lost, our father passed away last year. And I was a bit worried about our mum because, I don't know, for some reason, financially, as a kid, you don't really worry about your father, usually. I think that's maybe because oftentimes he's the breadwinner and stuff like that. But now there was only mum. There was definitely a bit of a worry in the back of my mind, but my brother and I did a lot of work on her as well, and she's like fully orange pilled now, and I honestly feel this like bit of relief, like knowing that I think this will be part of the reason that she will be fine, and we're not going to have to worry about her, and worst case, we can also be there to support her. But things like that, and like people in my friend group or even at the gym where I train, learning about not just Bitcoin, but what money actually is, what makes a good store of value, what is a store of value, what is the essence of money, like all of those things, like leave Bitcoin aside, actually asking yourself those questions and going back to first principles and rediscovering the world through that lens is so powerful.
I think that is actually that is the first step to actually get it. You have to unlearn all of those things that you took for granted all the time. So I think you shouldn't try to understand Bitcoin, or don't start to explain Bitcoin. Try to understand and explain money and the concept of money first. And after that, there are people that are literally like, oh shit, this is really what we're dealing with. And then you come with the Bitcoin stuff, and then it's way easier.
Yeah, absolutely have found similar success where you kind of just let it be known that, hey, if you want to talk about what is money, what is this system we're actually living in, why is it important to protect yourself against inflation and fiat debasement? Everyone notices everything getting more expensive, especially the last 5 years, and just being available in an organization with others around you to be that sounding board to say, hey, maybe I can educate you on this, and maybe I can provide some insight as to what's really going on here. Getting to probably the last part of this conversation, I just was curious across the panel, wanted to hear some, Sven, in your case, you left and did something else, and Tim, obviously, sort of the world you were working in, you completely, changed paths to a whole new dynamic of the companies and interactions you're having. Thomas, as well, with leaving to form this new organization. I'm curious to hear some anecdotes, some individual stories about what opportunities and what successes, I don't even want to say successes, but opportunities and maybe even just a greater sense of fulfillment, enrichment in life, that when you said, okay, here's the old fiat way of doing things, here's the old system in place, I'm going to take my time and energy and put it into educating people about this, getting the understanding out there, and what that's meant for each of you in your own personal lives.
I think the community, for those of us that are lucky enough to have one, is, for me, the most special part. Because navigating just where we are right now, and not going BK, not just don't die. And this has been one of the most fulfilling things I've ever done. But I think we could all sit up here for several hours and talk about the challenges. And, I don't know that I've ever really told anyone about the conversations I've had with co-GPs and LPs when we launched a Bitcoin fund, and they were like, yeah, we don't want to, you're distracted. We don't want to put any more capital with you because you're distracted, even though they owned Bitcoin. So just navigating all of that and keeping that resolve and conviction, but remaining professional and understanding that we're all on a journey. That's been fulfilling when you look back on it, maybe not so fulfilling when you're going through it.
It's definitely hard, and we talked earlier on this panel about having the understanding to be able to have the courage to bring this topic up. And so I'll let the rest of the panel respond to some fulfillment and rewarding experiences they've had taking that leap, exercising that courage, and what that's meant.
I mean, if I can, to be very honest, when I was thinking about joining Signum recently after it had been founded in 2018, I didn't even know what I was getting myself into. I didn't know that Bitcoin is probably the biggest evolution or revolution that the monetary system has seen. And so it was almost a coincidence, but now I think it's obviously amazing if you are working really on something and with something that may have such a massive impact on society and the future financial system. So, and that's very fulfilling. I mean, what is there cooler out there than working on something that really makes a difference ultimately, not just to me and you and our company, but basically the entire world and society?
Nothing. Sven or Jonas, I don't know.
Yeah, no, for me as well, I think just being able to be in this role of an educator around this topic, because education and the knowledge is the foundation that everything else gets built on. And that's all you can do in a way. Like, you can either build stuff or you can help educate people that can then build stuff on top of this. Has been super fulfilling for me. And for me as well, working in this retirement space, if I know that I just contribute a small part towards making sure that Australians have something stored for retirement, then that's already, fulfillment in and of itself.
Fulfilling things in my Bitcoin career would be first making my wife a full-blown Bitcoin maxi. She's even more
It's the most important.
But she's even more hardcore than I am, and I love her a lot if she's still in the room. So that will be number one. Number two, getting completely random messages from a guy in South Africa whom I've tipped in Bitcoin, and literally a year and a half later, I get a tip in, I think it's Wallet of Satoshi, with a little note on it saying, I understood it now. And that was all what it said. It makes me shiver, it makes me literally like tear up, because that was so cool. Was the second one. The third one was when Bitcoin hit 100 USK. I was posting on my LinkedIn, and I'm a LinkedIn guy. I mean, obviously I'm old, I'm like nearly 50 and I'm white, so I'm on LinkedIn a lot. So I posted, just told you so. That was everything that I posted. I've got such a big classical banking and Bitcoin community. We're all like blah blah blah, stay humble and all like that. And I was posting in capital letters, I'm not humble at this stage, just pure maxi. So that was really fulfilling as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone who stayed and enjoyed the last panel here. I hope maybe we inspired some people to actually take the step to talk to people or others in your organization, and ultimately put your time and energy into Bitcoin where you can, whether that's within your organization, outside of your organization. It'll be the best thing you do professionally, and thank all of you.
Secure your BTC Prague 2026 ticket at the lowest possible price now.